Thank you for being with us tonight. This meeting has been brought to you in part by
Let Grand Forks International Airport help you start your next vacation off on the right foot. Grand Forks International Airport offers flights to the sunny destinations of Orlando, Las Vegas, and Phoenix on Allegiant, and connections anywhere in the world through Minneapolis-St. Paul on Delta. Forget the hassle of long drives, parking nightmares, and stressful check-ins. The convenience of flying locally means less headaches and more time for you. Grand Forks International Airport. Your airport. Simply grand.
Know what's in this box? Well, in case your crystal ball is broken, here's a hint. Safe, reliable energy, for starters, but there's also a commitment to this community. See, at Xcel Energy, this is our hometown. So we're not just about making a living here, we're about living here. Oh, I wish I had wings.
In our community, we're always delivering. Xcel Energy, responsible by nature.
Grand Forks. On Saturday, August 17th, feel the thrill of WWE Live with the Universal Champion.
The age of Rollins is here, and we are going to burn it down!
See Seth Rollins collide with Baron Corbin for the Universal Championship, plus Braun Strowman battles Bobby Lashley one-on-one. It's WWE Live at Grand Forks on Saturday, August 17th. Tickets are available.
Zoning Commission meeting for August 7th, 2019. Roll call.
Budke. Johnson. Here. Kuhn. Here. Lee. Lunsky.
Here.
Manichek.
Here.
Reichert.
Here.
Sandy. Here. Wasvik.
Here. Quorum present. Reading and approval of the minutes from the July meeting. Comments, motions, concerns, changes, everything perfect?
Move approval.
Second. Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Mr. Kuhn. Further discussion? Seeing no hands, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved as presented. Item 3.1.
Plat of Auditors Subdivision Number 51, an ordinance dedicating right-of-way 2700 block North 42nd Street.
Okay.
Mr. Ginkler.
Good evening, Commissioners. If we could hit that bank of light, Sherilyn, to... Perfect. This has already been in front of you for preliminary approval, now up for final. The property highlighted in the black box is north of what is commonly referred to as Oscarville. It's up north on North 42nd Street and 27th Avenue North. This is the area that the city is purchasing property for a storm pond and a stockpile lot. Did get preliminary approval both from planning and zoning and the city council, and staff is recommending final approval of the plat as presented.
Okay, any questions before I, yes, Cole?
I'd like to do.
Okay. Do I have a, don't need a motion, don't need a second. I will grant you recusal. We're switching things around after 8 years. We're gonna get up in the new laws. I love it. You're recused, Mr. Johnson. There you go. Okay, with that, any questions before I open up the public hearing? I'll open up the public hearing for item 3.1. If anybody in the audience would like to come up and speak to that, please do so at this time. Seeing no one, close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Moved by Mr. Coon, second by Mr. Riker. Seeing no hands, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-2.
Replat of lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, Block 1, Edgewood Village First Re-Subdivision, 1600 to 1800 block of 47th Avenue South.
Mr. Gingrich.
The area that's subject to this replat has just gone through the full platting and rezoning approval processes. It's located north of 47th Avenue South, just east of the baseball diamonds, and then just west of the drainway. So it's the south half that is being proposed to be replatted again following the more previous replat. The map that you have on the screen and in your packet, the green lines represent the new proposed lot lines, and I highlighted in a red dash line the current lot lines that will go away. So it's important to note that none of the land uses are changing, the zoning's not changing, densities, everything that was approved in terms of the PUD zoning, nothing's changing. However, due to some architectural I think changes, some ownership clarifications, the lot that was shown in the southwest corner, that just is going to go away. So then that lot now becomes a part of this larger lot because it's all under one ownership. So there's no need to have a replat to distinguish ownership. Then the green line that I show in the southeast corner is the new lot line. The red lot line, this area will be owned by Altru, is what we've been told. And due to some architectural changes, they required a little bigger area for their lot. So therefore, the smaller lot will be replaced with the larger lot. Again, zoning's not changing, land uses are remaining the same. This kind of gives you an idea of just the proposed overall layout with the residential units to the northeast, series of store ponds down the center. Then we have the large sort of U-shaped facility. Then there's the kind of the bistro that was originally planned for this area that will be under the same ownership again, so there's no need to split it off into a different lot. And then the area that was in the southeast corner is the area that Altru will ultimately build their facility on this site. The only other change due to some of these modifications of the lots is the green circle is the approximate location of the initial proposed driveway. And it's because the site is shifting a little bit in order to accommodate all the internal, access and the drive aisles. The driveway is now being shifted approximately 50 to 60 feet to the west. So we're still seeing a pretty good separation. The bottom left-hand corner of the screen where the hand icon is the easterly driveway to South Middle School. So we're looking at over about 230 feet distance, and then we're still maintaining a reasonable distance then to the proposed South 17th Street. And I know that was one of the big concerns when we initially began the discussion on this site, was how are we going to maintain reasonable access control on 47th Avenue relative to the development, relative to the South Middle School. This is a fast-track replat because we're not dedicating any further right-of-way, so staff is recommending final approval of the replat as submitted.
All right, any questions for Mr. Gingrich before I open the public hearing? Mr. Riker.
Thank you. So do we require some kind of parking agreement then? Because it looks like from doing this, that the main area that's going to need the most parking is only going to own a small part of the parking.
That will come further in our review. This is just the conceptual detail plan that was submitted. So they'll have to develop their own internal instruments for crossover agreements, so that'll come into play.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Markey. So I think in the earlier site plan that we saw, some months ago, before we had vacated the street, obviously the site was narrower. It didn't incorporate that amount of land, and the layout was then differently, right? Where we see these like look like single-family homes, I guess, in like the top left of map B. Because it was narrower, there was a different arrangement, right? Everything was kind of arranged along a north-south axis, and here we've moved to like this east-west and this like serpentine layout. And I guess part of that discussion regarding the vacation came down to this idea of using the park as an amenity to the residents of those homes.
Correct.
And in fact, I pulled the language from the minutes. The park next door provides an amenity the developer wishes to take advantage of to allow seniors to access without crossing a busy street, and are requesting that 19th Street be vacated. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is like, with this serpentine layout, like there's more houses there, but now a certain percentage of them have a driveway, I guess. Why is this like better and provide better access for the residents there?
Well, in terms of the plat versus the site plan, we really haven't got into that level of detail yet. We had asked, in this case, the developer to just show us something, so at least we have an idea relative to the plat lines. So we really haven't gotten into a detailed review, other than these are intended to be, of course, private drives,
right,
versus, again, what you had indicated of having a major roadway. And so far, we've been told, I guess that's still the spirit of the development, is to make sure that the parkland is maintained to be an amenity. So we haven't really gotten into those discussions of, pedestrian access. I don't know if I'm addressing your specific question, or?
Yes. I guess I more so wanted to point it out. And then I'm not sure that this site plan is really achieving the spirit of what was described last time around.
Again, it's just the conceptual layout, so we'll have a lot of those further and deeper conversations, as within reason, of course, with what we're able to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ricky. Very good. But this is, like you said, tracking through pretty quick here, so this is the last time we're going to see it, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, good comments. Open the public hearing. Anybody in the audience would like to step up to the microphone and address item 3.2, please do so at this time. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the commission. Mr. Reichert.
Move approval.
Thank you. Seconded by Ms. Sandy. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 3-3.
Appeal to the DDP for variances to second front yard setback and landscaping for Wonder Years Daycare, Lot 1, Block 7, BFM Edition, 2550 28th Avenue South.
Mr. Kingler.
Okay, just to give you a point of reference, we have Columbia Mall off to the west, Columbia Road, the post office, just to the south of the area highlighted in yellow, which is the Wonder Years property. To give you a little more bird's eye view of the layout of the property, we got the main existing building, ample green space. They've got a large playground area, and then all the the current parking on the west and on the east side. Well, they have big plans on expanding their facility. There's more children to take care of these days, so they are in dire need of expansion of their floor area. So they came to us with the proposal. So to give you the background, the main structure is bordered in red. The building addition, and I believe the owners are here. If you have more detailed questions about the operation and some of those things, I think they'd be more than willing to talk about it. The hashed area is the building addition, And then I've just outlined the building addition in the red line just to emphasize. So this is an appeal to the detailed development plan. There's two specific areas that we are working with. Because this is a multi-sided lot, it has some different building setback requirements than a typical corner lot or just a single frontage lot. In this case, the easterly side is allowed to be half of what is normally required for a full building setback. So in this case, the full building setback is 25 feet off of a public street. South 25th Street to the east, it then is allowed again half of that. So that put the building setback at 12.5 feet. But according to their plans and how their floor plans are laying out, it works out better, and I think it's more achievable for what they need to go from 12.5 feet to 10 feet. So in this case, there's already an existing 10-foot utility easement that borders the easterly side of the property. And and they understand, and we've indicated that we can't encroach into that utility easement, both at grade level or subgrade. We don't want the foundations extending into the actual easement to possibly cause future conflict. So that's the one of two of the variances that is being requested. The second is typically there's a buffer yard that's required on all perimeters of the property. In this case, due to the building expansion, the expansion goes into the area where we would want to see that buffer yard. We don't want to see the buffer yards as much as possible to stay out of the utility easements for the most obvious reasons. So in this case, really this variance recognizes omitting the requirement for that buffer yard just for that stretch of the building that is abutting the street. The architects have identified all existing berm trees. So in this case, there's about 4 or so that are already providing some of that landscaping buffer. To the east, there's our multiple family buildings and then 2 parking garages with on-street parking. So staff has evaluated these separations and some of these, the setback distance relative to the adjoining properties. And we are recommending approval of the appeal for the 2 items, the reduction in the easterly building setback from 12.5 to 10, and omitting the buffer yard requirement for that stretch of the building expansion. The rest of the buffer yard will be required to be installed as the buffer yard that's required on the site plan. So with that, I would entertain any questions. Again, the owners are here if you have any questions for them.
Okay, and this is a public hearing also, so any questions from us, that would be Mr. Reichert.
Thank you. Why, so the idea behind the buffer setback is what? It's to have room between the, is there a sidewalk there, right?
Yes, there's the, kind of hard to tell, but just on the easterly side of this red line is the public sidewalk. Then as we go west, there's approximately a foot to where a 10-foot utility easement starts. So a lot of times in the past, we've put these buffer yards in the utility easements to help accommodate more space. In this case, this site has available space to make sure we don't get it in the utility easement to get it out. So what I've shown in green here is a 10-foot that runs the whole north-south stretch. So in this case, we're recognizing that if we're acknowledging a building reduction from 12.5 to 10, of course, in the same area that a few trees might otherwise be planted. We're just saying, for the record, we would like to just omit that requirement from the site plan.
So how far from the sidewalk to the side of the building then?
From the sidewalk itself, depending on the exact distance, I would say anywhere from maybe 10 to 11.5 feet from.
So it would basically be that building setback, that 10 foot?
Right, you'd have the easterly edge of the building, approximately 10 feet, then maybe another foot, and then the sidewalk.
Okay.
Mr. Kuhn.
Brad, what kind of utilities are in there? Is that water, electricity? What's?
Right now, there are no identified utilities within that easement. Typically, our water, sewer, all the city utilities are outside of those easements. So these easements that are on the private property are meant for all the private utilities, whether it's, fiber optics, telephone, electric, all those So that's why we like to maintain those open as much as possible for,
I was just concerned because if it was water or something, if a pipe broke and
Right.
they have to excavate to fix it, you've got a building right up against it.
right, yeah, exactly.
Mr. Reichert?
How many stories is this building, Brad?
I believe the addition is only a single-story addition. Right. Whereas the main building, I think, has the mezzanine two-story.
And then what kind of roof is,
It's gonna match the existing
so it's a,
asphalt.
no, I assume it's a pitched roof of some sort? So how high is this center of the pitch? Do we have a peak on that side?
Oh, maybe if we could have,
We can entertain questions, a couple quick questions from the owners group, and then we can open the public hearing, yeah.
The ridge, which will run right along that green line there, I mean, down the middle, is going to be, it'll be a double slope roof right there with the ridge down the middle, and it'll be about 18 feet high at that point. And the eave that'll be closest to the sidewalk would be about 12 feet high. Oh, and I'm Casey Hutton with EAPC, Architects Engineers.
So why do we need to build it? You got plenty of room here. Why do we need to encroach on this?
I'm Dan Pulaski,
Yeah.
and my wife and I are the owners. So there's a few reasons why we chose this layout. One being that we want to preserve as much of the actual playground as possible for the kids. We have a lot of kids. They need that outdoor space. We're already going into it somewhat. We're trying to avoid going too far. Bigger reasons being that we are subject to a lot of regulations in childcare. One being square footage per child, one being exits, one being how many floors, they don't want us to put infants upstairs. The existing building, right now our infants are upstairs. And that was because we're grandfathered into old rules. We have never been comfortable with that. We've always wanted to move them downstairs. We also want to expand the number of spaces for infants, because that's the number one demand in town, in the state. There's very few people, or very places that take infants, and we want to be the one to kind of help ease that need in town. So right now we have 2 infant rooms, 8 kids in each one. We're going to expand to 6, 8 in each room. So to get the square footage we need, to get the layout we need, to get the exits we need in case of an emergency, this is the best fit for the lot. We understand that it causes a few issues, but we're hoping that we can get past that to get to the point we need to get to with to help the city out with the kids.
So how many feet off the sidewalk are you, or how far off the sidewalk are you?
Currently, or?
Gonna be. Wanna be, I should say.
As far as I understand, about 11 feet, I believe.
11 feet?
I believe so.
right, yeah, if we account for the typical 1 foot separation between the property line and the outside of the sidewalk edge, so the 10-foot setback plus the 1, so it's plus or minus about 11 feet from the edge of the sidewalk to the side of the building.
And you've got a berm there as well.
Right, yeah, the berm is then right on the other side.
I just am concerned with the sidewalk.
Yeah. Well, I'm concerned with the view too, as you're coming down south on 25th, seeing around that corner to 28th.
Has this, or does this need to go out to the neighboring businesses, buildings, whatnot, for just so they know what's going on?
We sent out our standard 400-foot notification of the request. We did get 1 phone call from an individual living, I think, either to the east and further south, just asking what is the project, and once it was described to the individual, there was no further questions. But in terms of any visibility issues, we're far from what we typically use. This triangle in the very southeast corner is our standard codified sort of visibility triangle for intersections. So in this case, we're talking the building is substantially beyond that area of concern.
I'm no architect, but there you go, you got it. Well, at this time, I think, any other I'll open the public hearing.
Yeah.
Open the public hearing. Anybody would like to come up to the microphone and address item 3.3, please do so at this time. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Any comments? Mr. Reichert, go ahead. Mr. Reichert?
Yeah. So it's been moved and seconded. Brad, I understand what they're doing here somewhat, but talk to me about just the precedent that this sets. Are we concerned about that at all? To say, because honestly, when we make changes like this, I'd like to see some hardship, some reason why. I guess I didn't really get that from the owners. And so I'm just a little concerned that all of a sudden we have people coming in saying, I want to get rid of these, I want to get rid of these, I want to get rid of these. Why should we not be concerned about that in this case?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. No matter what variance or appeal we typically deal with, no matter what, that's the question we ask, are we setting a precedent? So staff always has to be put in the initial position of recognizing what are the negative impacts, what are the hazards, just based on the decision.
Right.
You know, in this case, we took that into account. So from a physical layout, we didn't think that building expansion would interfere with, you know, things like intersections, pedestrian traffic, so kind of passed that test. We do take, you know, into account the needs of the developer, kind of what position are they in. You know, in this case, based on how the building is constructed, it's my understanding really the only logical place that this addition could go was to the east, you know, versus to the north. You know, the northerly part of the property is well utilized to begin with their outdoor play areas and those types of things. So kind of really secluded in our minds. This is the only area really that it's possible to expand. Knowing that code said 12.5 feet and they needed 10, we just had to evaluate that and make that determination. Are we giving up too much? Are we crossing the line?
But aren't we giving up 12? Because we're giving up 10 with the buffer yard too, right? Are we giving up 2.5 feet and then 10 feet?
On the building setback, we're giving up, so to speak, the 2.5 feet to get to 10. With the landscaping, we're just basically doing away with a few trees that would have otherwise been planted within that.
So it's the same amount of space?
Well, you're
Just not trees.
Right.
So are you still going to have grass? You're still going to have grass in that 10?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's only moving it back 2.5 feet.
Right.
That's
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. 3-3 passes. 3-4.
Replat of Lot 1, Block 1, Airport 5th, re-subdivision located at 1212 North 47th Street.
Ms. Halford.
Good evening. It's been a while.
Welcome.
Thank you. So this is just a simple cleanup. We're looking over at the Staymart Travel Center. We're on the corner, southeast corner of Gateway Drive and North 47th. Really, we're just cleaning up the numbers on the plat. You can see that they're bolded in, well, they're bolded on the plat right here that you have in your packet as well as up on the screen. So it's just cleaning that up so those read correct, as well as it gave us the opportunity to pick up a 10-foot utility easement along that side of the plat as well. So staff is recommending approval unless anyone has any questions.
Okay, any questions before I open the public hearing? Mr. Budke.
Yeah, you mentioned the 10-foot utility easement.
Yep.
I see that kind of toward the top.
So if you can follow my cursor, it kind of just fades out up there. It's just continuing that along.
I see.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, at this time I'll open the public hearing. Anybody in the audience would like to step up to the microphone and address item 3-4, please do so at this time. Seeing no one, close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Reichert. Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Mr. Budke. Discussion, nothing. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion 3-4 passes. 4-1.
Replat of Lot 22, Block 1, Southern Estates, 12th Edition, 4,000 to 4,400 blocks of South Columbia Road.
Mr. Brooks.
We've talked about this one a few times in the past,
Yeah.
but what's going on, this is Columbia Road. I'll kind of quickly go through with it for everybody.
I asked Mr. Gingler in our briefing, are you sure we want to bring this up again?
I wasn't.
Here we go.
Here's Columbia Road. Here's 45th down here at the southern part. So this is the area where the commercial property is being developed for commercial. Currently, we have site plans that we're looking at for medical office down here in this area, but the developers have asked for essentially just the split on this lot. They're looking for a proposed street to come in a cul-de-sac where 43rd would be. They want to make that a public street, which provides them the ability to assess that and have that paid for by the city. And we've reviewed it in terms of having a bulb around this. This wasn't a request by the city, this was a request by the developer to do that. It won't affect, I think one of the biggest questions is, sidewalk, and is that going to go through? Because that was a question obviously that was centered on before. We aren't affecting anything along these residential lots along the east side here. So this will just be their request for a public street to come in on the site. So they'll still have to maintain, it'll increase a little bit what their setbacks would be in the center portion, but it appears that they're meeting all of those as well because they didn't change their building footprints on those at all. So with that, it does meet our code requirements in terms of cul-de-sac and what's required for that. So with that, staff's recommending approval. This is preliminary. It does go to final hearing next month, assuming that they receive preliminary approval.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Any questions, comments, discussion from Mr. Rudke?
So I'll be honest, I'm not really a big fan of this plan. I wasn't really a fan of it when we saw it last time around. I know I was...
How many times have we seen it, right?
Right. In my mind, it makes no sense to have a street that does not connect through to anything and just ends in a cul-de-sac. Essentially, we're doing, it sounds like we're doing a favor to the developer. This doesn't serve the neighborhood beyond. In fact, the neighborhood was pretty instrumental in that process. I'm not sure what it adds to.
Well, yeah, from our perspective, it actually doesn't change anything other than making it a public street coming in there. The private street that was going to be there before was going to essentially cul-de-sac, if you will, anyway. So the change that we're having here is this stretch will go from a private to a public street. So externally, actually on the ground, nothing's going to change to anybody other than now it's a public street and the city's going to be responsible for maintenance there, those types of things. It'll be special assessed out to just these properties immediate because they're the benefiting properties. Obviously, the residential wouldn't get any of that special assessment because they're not even, they don't even have access to it. So from that perspective, I don't think concept-wise and to what people are going to feel like on the street, nothing will change. I guess I don't know what else to say other than that, but it won't change anything that's already been approved. Maybe not unanimously, but it was approved already. And I'm just saying what's there today versus what would be there next would be that this would just be a public street instead of a private street.
Miss Sandy, please.
Unless you can change my mind, I don't think I'm very supportive of this because, again, it doesn't look different. The only thing that to me is different is who's going to be paying for maintenance, snow removal. All of a sudden the taxpayers are paying for that instead of the property owner for what should be a private road. And I would imagine that there are all sorts of commercial developments and privately owned land that has something similar. And are we going to start throwing in private roads so that the city is responsible to maintain that. I don't think it's fair to the rest of us to have to pay for what is essentially a private road, and it was okay to be a private road before. Is there any reason why this should be a city public road? What am I gonna gain from this being a public road?
It's a great question, Miss Sandy. I asked it.
Yeah, it's just accessing 2 lots. There is a representative, I'll see if he wants to speak to it at all. I don't know if there's a representative from the development team per se, other than maybe the engineer who worked on the project, so. I don't know if you have.
Mr. Lunsky?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I mean, this proposed street does make more sense with the pedestrian traffic and all the other things we were trying to fit in before, because it does give us a controlled intersection, 4 ways. So I think this makes more sense for pedestrian, but I do agree that we have to see a really good reason why the city should come forward and pay for this in the private land.
Miss Sandy?
I think in our other discussions though with this property over the years, we didn't want that intersection. Am I correct? Am I remembering that correctly? The majority of us didn't want that intersection?
I'd say we definitely heard the majority didn't want the sidewalk, but I don't know if I heard no to an intersection from the majority, especially as we went all the way up and through. I think what I heard was, we understand that there's going to be a street there, because not having a street and an intersection there affects other neighborhoods as well, because if we don't have, if you think about what's to the east of here, getting out of those areas, and we had some of those discussions, and not everybody was in agreement with that, but not having that intersection there makes it very difficult to make a left out for those coming from the west and heading north on Columbia Road.
So who will use this proposed street?
This one's going to be directly to these two commercial developments. That's going to be the only ones that'll have access to it.
So if this were approved to be a city street, we just looked at the Edgewood development. Can they ask us to make that entrance a city street so that the city can maintain all of that as well? Or where does this become the private commercial property owner's responsibility if it's only serving their property?
Well, we have to remember too, I mean, it's not that the city, these folks will have to pay for the street. The initial cost gets special assessed back.
Sure.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that was.
No, I understand that, but we're still doing, it's still the snow removal, it's the maintenance of the road, it's all of those things. Well, that's how I feel about it.
Mr. Johnson?
Would there be a turn lane required coming off 47th into there, or, because I believe that's only.
Off of Columbia Road, you
Or
mean?
Columbia Road, yeah.
So left turn lane, yes, left turn in. There's going to be right in, obviously. There could be through coming into that site. So all the turning movements are all taken care of. I didn't bring that traffic study, but there's actually a traffic study that we had this developer actually put together as well, and it's gone through our traffic engineer and discussed, and it meets what our normal requirements are on a street. The difference here is that this one just does cul-de-sac now. It wouldn't go all the way through. So I think what the developer's main thing was, you know, the initial request was for it to go all the way through. That was blocked. But normally this would have been a road that went all the way through. And so he's saying, hey, if we cul-de-sac this, that normally this would have went all the way through and it could have been a public street. So I think when they're looking at it, that's kind of what they're looking at, is that, and it's not that, I mean, the street's going to have to be to a higher design. It's got to meet city specs. It's not going to be asphalt or anything else. It's going to have to meet all city specs. But the benefit to that then is the taxes that you do pay do get you the snow removal. Just on that cul-de-sac, they'll still have to do their parking lots, etc.
I guess what's the benefit of it if the other properties to the north are accessing off Columbia, why come in those two properties from that street?
So these ones up here.
Is there going to be accesses on Columbia for?
Yeah, there's a access here, direct in, and that'll go right into their parking lot. And then this is an access here off of Columbia, and then down here, 45th would be, you can enter into the site too from 45th.
Satisfied, Mr. Johnson? I'm gonna throw my 2 cents in. Sometimes I do that. I remember when the developer came to us, one of the many times, multiple, and we've tried to help this out because we did feel like he's been very due diligent about getting back and trying and trying. My whole thing was, I thought they did not want that whole thing and part of the raised sidewalk and all these different things we were doing, because we're kind of handcuffing on them on how this property can be developed. If we give them 2 entrances off of Columbia and say, here's 2 entrances off of Columbia, we're kind of done, and it's up to him to design it. I don't know why in the world we would put a city street in the middle of it. And I know we had this conversation and there was some, waiting for some reason, I guess, to say why. I remember it different. I remember it like you did, Megan, where it was gonna kind of handcuff him if we made him put a raised sidewalk and different ideas to get that sidewalk and that pedestrian through. Now that that's off the table and been voted no by everybody, I guess I don't see the reason. That's my whole, I thought it would handcuff the developer. Maybe I'm wrong. That's my 2 cents.
Brad pointed out to me too, the one other thing I missed, not that has nothing to do with what you, I just wanted to also point out that they're splitting the lots here as well, which obviously I don't think anybody would have an issue with, but in terms of potentially where you're headed, there may be one piece that you guys may be okay with.
So then that's, if it's this way, if it's gonna be this way, then that southern lot would access off of 45th?
That's correct.
And
they're gonna be connected through parking lots as well, but in terms of
the idea now is that they're going to connect to each other with parking lots.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and a lot of times those things get done too as part of financing reasons.
Sure. Yep.
So,
all right. Yeah, and I guess the reason we kind of point that out just to make sure that if the commission decides to approve the plat without the street right away, the significance also still is that the intent of this replat is to divide that southerly portion into 2 lots.
We have approved this plat, correct?
It's
the lot is all one. There is an approved plat. This is a replat, right?
This is a replat, yeah. It's all one lot right now, so all the way up from 40th all the way down, I believe, is all.
But they're not asking for split the lots right now, correct?
That's what I pointed out. Is
so
that
there's 2 different
there's
things
3
here.
different lots that could. There's a lot here. There's a lot here, and there's a lot here, and then there's an added right away here.
Now, here's another question. If we decide to not give them the street, do we have any input from the developer if they still want the lot split? I suppose we can't do that.
You could approve this without the street.
Except where the lot, just put the lot line in the middle of the street?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then throw that back. Yeah, and
we could do it preliminarily. We could do that preliminarily, and if they needed those lot lines changed.
And then we can
do
have
that.
a discussion with them in between here and
Right.
there. And, yeah.
Okay.
If they decide to just pull completely, they could do that.
It will be as soon as we have a public hearing.
Don't have to.
Oh, we don't?
We don't have to have a public hearing.
All right, I'll move approval without the proposed street with a lot line in the middle of the proposed street.
Second.
We'll give you a second. So, Mr. Reichert and seconded by Ms. Sandy. Mr. Matichak.
Yeah, so does that mean that the lots are split now, or just not?
That would put, as I understand it, that would make 3 different lots. You would have one here, and then this.
Do they want the lot split?
Which is what they want, right?
I think that's at least something that they were looking at the very least.
So this replat would split those 2 lots? I want to be clear on that, so I know.
Yeah, it would be 3 different lots.
Has nothing to do with the street, but right now they would have 2 separate lots with this replat, doing it what he said.
like he
putting the
said.
lot line down where the
And
road
there'd be no public street. It would all be private.
Well, I know that, but still, there'd be 2 lots now created.
Three.
Three, but I mean, because of this, it would split that lot. Because of the lot line down where the proposed street was.
Yeah, this was a separate lot from this one already. They
Oh,
had
it was, okay,
yep.
sorry, I thought they
Yep.
were together, and I thought we were splitting them. I just wanted to make sure on the replat, so that the developer didn't come in and say, hey, I didn't want
so
those
there's-
lots split.
So there's already a lot line where the proposed street is in the old plat?
No, just on this one, there's a small connection right here.
Can you
On
show
that.
us where the 3 lots would be?
I'll zoom in here a little bit. There's a northern lot here. See how this is connected here? So this is one lot,
Yeah, yeah. So we just extend that one.
and this one, and then this one here.
So currently, is there, if we have that small line,
Right here.
is
This
there
would just-
currently a lot line there?
Yeah, right here. So you'll just connect, what your motion did was
Extend that line?
extend that all the way over to Columbia.
Okay.
And was he also then approving?
Yeah, this
the
lot
new
line. Yeah, and between 2 and 3. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying the change between this and what his motion was. That's correct. So you'll still have 3 different lots.
And if we want, when they come back for approval, if they want something different than that, as far as lot lines, can we give final to that?
It's another replat, right?
I'm giving them a replat that they didn't ask for in that line in the middle. What I'm saying, and my idea is if they don't like that, when we come back for final, we can get rid of that or move it 5 feet or do something with it.
I think you'd have that discretion as it goes through, just as long as those things are all agreed upon before final approval.
Okay.
I think the last thing we want to do is table it.
I don't want to slow them down. That's the
Right.
last thing I want.
We want to have a good discussion about it.
So
Yes, Sandy.
are we really just, that lot line was already there, so we're just denying the proposed street
That's,
and approving
This
the new
lot
lot line?
that's what
Does that make it a simpler thing for them to just come back?
This isn't a lot line today, it was just proposed today.
Oh, I thought that
Yeah.
was the way it was.
This is all
split
one
up.
lot today.
Oh, so
We're
that,
back to kind of
was
our
like that.
original
Okay, sorry.
amended
I
motion,
thought this-
motion and second. Mr. Matchek,
Just to be clear, okay, if they don't like this change to this plat, they have to replat again?
We'll have final next month.
Okay.
They.
A plat's a plat, I mean, that's where the lines are, that's where they're drawn.
Right. So
If you want to change them, you have to have a replat, right?
we're at preliminary approval today.
I know.
And this will go to city council. In between here and city council, they can still make their pitch to city council
Okay.
to say, no, this doesn't work, or yes, it does, or city council has the ability to override planning commission, or they'll go along with it. And then this will come back for final approval and.
In which the final replat can be changed from what we did now.
Correct.
That's all I wanted to know, thank you.
we want to keep them moving.
Yeah.
I agree, Mr. Matchek and Mr. Reichert.
I just wanted to make sure that they didn't have to go through another
Good.
replat step again.
Great questions.
To start all over again, because usually a replat is,
I'm 100% behind your question and statements and answers. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Yes, please. Read it back to us, please. Give her your best attempt.
So the record, as far as I can assess, would be that the motion is to deny the public street and instead have the lot lines drawn?
Lot line down the center of the public road.
Yep.
The proposed public road.
Lot line in the center of the public road.
And then the other lot line.
And then
that they
approve the
proposed.
other lot line, which if we don't take it out, should go through. Okay, did that answer your question, Mr. Johnson? So with that, any further discussion before we vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Item 5.1, Mr. Gingler.
We have some discussion items here this evening. First is just a simple update. In your packets, you have a summary that Andrea prepared coming out of the July 24th subcommittee that was discussing the use of gravel, curb, gutter, and those types of things. So the subcommittee covered some ground, and I think the goal is for staff to start taking a closer look at some of the proposed changes. And I think the goal was then to have the subcommittee again at some point, meet again to refine some of those proposed changes, and then ultimately bring them back forward to the commission. So it's still sort of a work in progress right now. So this item was just meant to be sort of an update as to what the subcommittee has been working on and plans on continuing to work on.
Perfect, thank you for that. Any other reports from the planning department?
Yes, we have a discussion wanted to bring forward tonight. As you recall, we have been discussing the dog daycare ordinance that we passed quite a few years ago. Well, we now have, as we talked about last month, there's been a need to discuss the ability to allow a larger outdoor area for the dogs. So we don't need to spend a lot of time on the whole ordinance, but each one of you should have a copy in front of you with some highlighted language. Nothing really staff is proposing to change within the ordinance in terms of, as you look at your report, starting with number 11, special conditions. We have the written plan of operation, requires the outdoor fence for the area. So the area that I've highlighted on your copy in the box is the area that we've been discussing not only with you. I've ran a few things by the city attorney. So what tonight the goal is to sort of get you up to date as to what we've been talking about, and then we intend on bringing something in actual code format for September. We've been at it for quite some time now. So with the current Petopia, and again the owners are patiently waiting in the crowd again if we have to answer some questions. On the one hand, staff, again, has been talking with the city attorney. So if you look at the language that is in the box, starting with letter D, we feel that it's maybe more appropriate with these dog daycare facilities that we don't have a defined, in this case, especially very, very small area. And I think everybody, or most everyone, I think, concurred when we talked about this last, that it's critical that we do allow a larger area. It's not conducive to dogs. You get dogs in a smaller area, they get confined, they have a tendency more so to bark and get agitated. The concrete surface of this has proven not to be conducive because your dog, you don't want your dog, in the garage doing the same thing that they're being essentially forced to or trained to do in this environment. So we've talked with the health department, we've done a lot of research. There's a lot of different materials out there that are used today. There's pea gravel in combination with grass. There's synthetic turf that is being widely used. So just if we go down by the number, and again, we'll probably meet with the city attorney again after we're done with these discussions to bring something to you to actually to vote on. But what we're proposing is that we don't have a defined maximum area. And one of the main reasons is that, yes, we have 2 dog care facilities today. Presumably we could have more. So much like how the ordinance is written now, where we say that the outdoor area can be no closer, just in terms of black and white language, no closer than 300 feet from a residential structure and 100 feet from a commercial structure. In the case of Petopia, the code allowed a reduction in that if it was shown to not show a negative impact on the surrounding properties. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, back up. So the area shown in the sort of the greenish blue, that's the current, where the current operation was. So both the commission and council took those distances of 300 feet and 100 feet and made the determination that because the dog daycare, the outdoor area, was between the two existing buildings, it was, a physical separation from the adjoining property owners, that was the rationale to allow a lesser distance, not even taking into account that we were reducing this distance knowing that this outdoor area was physically separated by the building from residents that were within that 300-foot range. So I think based on that, and we don't know how much exact area, in this case, Petopia can expand to, but the intent of the ordinance would be able to allow for them to show what type of materials they're going to use, the ultimate size of the expansion, does it have any negative impacts on the surrounding areas? So we're really trying to achieve those same goals of minimum distance, materials, all those things that we would review, but we're not necessarily hamstrung on a maximum of 300 square feet. And that was one of the things that Mr. Swanson pointed out, because originally when Petopia came forward to request their conditional use, I thought that was something like we just did with a building setback, that it said 300 square feet. Mr. Swanson indicated that wasn't possible the way that ordinance is drafted. If it says 300 for this specific area, the only way to change it would be to actually change the code. Therefore, that's why we're here having this discussion. So the goal would be to bring back again this plan of allowing a larger area under specified conditions and criteria. Also, Petopia will need to amend their existing conditional use permit approved if this ordinance is to follow through. So they kind of go hand in hand. So I think the September timeframe would be the timeframe to introduce the ordinance, also then for Petopia to show you their expansion plans, get everything out on the table for discussion. So we're looking at a new ordinance, and then also we're looking at what that ordinance will impact the conditional use permit. No other changes are being proposed in terms of capacity. Right now, the way the ordinance is written, it's for the inside play area, you need 50 square feet of referred to as play area per dog. So we do the math of their existing business, and they're allowed up to 60 dogs at this point with where their location. There are some possibilities in the building for them to expand for maybe some additional play area, office, other incidental or accessory uses to the building. I guess I've been talking a lot. Is there anything that the owners would like to kind of pick up and follow on with us here?
I cut this off pretty quick.
Travis Horning.
No.
Katie Olson. So, just on top of what Brad was saying, at the next meeting, we will submit plans for an expansion, also on top of with the new outdoor area. We are very busy, and we want to get in while the iron's hot still. 3 things were proven after we opened. Proof of product idea, it worked, great location, and people have been very receptive of it. So we do plan on expanding into, I don't know, can you zoom in? Should say hope to, not we plan to. This area here, we'll be submitting an official plan at the next meeting, kind of show what we're going to go for. We will be increasing our actual floor space from the dogs. I think it was about 1,500 square feet, and that will actually give us 3 separate running areas for the dogs. So right now they're in one big area with a fence down the middle separating the small dogs from the big dogs. With this new plan that we're hoping, it'll actually separate those 3 running areas. One will be for overflow or dogs that need to get away from a group of dogs, and then another will be for small dogs, and then we'll have the big dog play area still. On top of that will be whatever outdoor area our developer has allotted for us, we'll put that into it at the same time. And on top of that, Brad had mentioned that we don't intend or ask for any changes on the 50 square feet per dog, but we did have some questions about number 5 there. It says, overnight boarding facilities, the maximum number of dogs kept for boarding at any given time shall not exceed 50% of the maximum dogs allowed in the facility. We were looking to possibly remove that language from the code. We've done our research and we cannot find a single dog daycare anywhere that does that. We don't know why it's there, or why it was written. And from a business standpoint, we have to have enough kennels for every dog we have anyway. So we have to have 60 kennels for 60 dogs for the safety of the dogs and also for our staff. So at night, it's kind of disheartening seeing 30 kennels that empty when we can only have 30 overnight. It's actually easier overnight when they're all in their kennels. They don't need 50 square feet. They're in their own confined kennels. We have a sprinkler system tied into the fire department and it works. It's been tested twice. So there is that safety precaution there too, if anything were to happen overnight with an abundance of dogs, that we have that extra safety net there too. So, any questions?
Mr. Reichert.
So one of the things, when you talked about this before, the concrete outside, that's one of the things you want to get rid of.
Yes.
And what would you replace that with?
We have researched a lot, but I think just for cost efficiency and our climate, P-rock.
So yes, as I was thinking about that, I think the idea behind having an impervious material is that it gets cleaned off then, and it's easier to clean.
Correct.
I get concerned with 50 dogs peeing in an area for 365 days of the year for 5 years. What's that going to smell like? I think the idea behind having an impervious surface is it gets cleaned up. It doesn't just go into the P-rock.
Our staff nightly, they spray a chemical that's safe for dogs, and animal chemical, over that outdoor area already. And that is supposed to take care of some of that.
Okay.
But actually the P-rock would help with our cleaning of it. The girls would just be able to, if there was fecal matter, they would just take the whole mass and throw it away with the rocks or what have you, rather than right now they have to scoop it off concrete.
So every time a
and
dog
smear it.
poops, you get rid of the P-rock?
Not every time, but if it's not always solid.
Alrighty then. You know, we had a great idea up here in the commission for you. You know, the Alaris Center's probably going to put in new turf. What about AstroTurf? You know, you got a great deal
Yeah,
there.
if the Alaris wants to get rid of some of their old turf, I know somebody who might buy it.
There is some issues too. A turf is, for us, would be great. But kind of along with P-rock too, and the smell that you brought up, worry about that. I am part of a group of dog daycare owners and staff. And I've seen on there quite a bit too that they actually have issues with smell with the turf and how to clean it off, just because of the material it's made out of. So kind of coming with every single thing that you can look into, I think no matter what, smell is going to be an issue. But I guess it's just finding the right way to try and lessen it, if you will. But
So do any other places use impervious surfaces for their their play area?
Oh, yeah.
As we've mentioned before, we also have, roughing it.
Yeah.
And roughing it right now, we know that they had at some point expanded their outdoor area, which is enclosed in a fence, and we know that they had been using some pea gravel rather than the concrete. So part of that discussion also relates to what we're doing here. Because that expansion didn't happen through the normal course of approval of renewal of the conditional use permit, we need to figure out how does that situation compare to here. Well, one thing that it has served for a couple purposes is that the pea gravel that they have been using has been, from what I understand, more conducive than the concrete. There was no complaints, or we monitored those types of things when we first started talking about this. So the two-part goal here is to develop a framework of how to allow the larger area with the proper materials, surface drainage. How does then that relate to the existing business of roughing it? And at the end, then the goal is to come to a happy medium, so to speak. So that's all going to depend on what's brought forward and how we articulate those two.
So, go ahead. So what you're looking at is getting rid of also this 300 square foot area, or just making that still subject to approval?
Right, the goal would be to not specify a maximum, because each
But do we still have to approve it? I mean, because I don't want to have, no offense to you guys, but you guys are roughing it, all of a sudden say, well, there's nothing in code, it doesn't need approval, so all of a sudden we're going to build this huge outdoor area.
No, the logistics and the specifics of that outdoor area has to be approved.
Still has to be approved.
Based on conditions that are established in code. How close is it to residential? Basically the lay of the land. So that's kind of the goal, to create that ability to be able to accomplish something yet still within reason of code. So that's I guess staff's intent of what we want to bring forward.
And Brad, I would just ask that when you are rewriting this, if you're bringing it to us, that you still have, you can make it bigger than 300 square feet, come up with a number, but I'd still like to see a number in the code, you know, that we kind of all agree seems to be about the right number. This is kind of back to signs again, almost. I'm having flashbacks here. Because it is so site specific and and the way that you build it. I mean, if they wanted this in the front of their building, I probably wouldn't approve it, but, you know.
Again, situational,
Right,
that would be.
so I just want to make sure that we still have some sort of parameters in there. I mean, let's not just throw the parameters out when you rewrite this. Still have some parameters, and understanding, you know, that it can be expanded, and that, you know, we can expand it to what have you.
Yeah, we can take a look to see if there's what rational or what number would be appropriate, or at least
And then
how to
use
get
that
to it.
same language that you talk about, the minimum distances, maybe use that sort of language also in the size of the area, the 300 feet, and also the surface maybe.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mr. Matichak.
Thank you. I think the P-rock is a very good alternative to the concrete. In fact, I think it's a lot better. It's got to be fairly thick. It's a porous material, so stuff is going to flow through it or whatever. You can wash it off with rain, you can wash it off with a hose. It's probably a little bit easier to clean than concrete is. The thing is, there's still going to be the drainage. The drainage has to be considered, whether it's concrete or P-rock, because the moisture is going to go through the P-rock and it's still got to go someplace. So that's still a concern. So I don't think there's going to be a constant odor there, because if it's washed off and used properly, it'll be okay. And it's actually probably a little bit better than concrete. So I don't know. I think it's a good alternative. But there should be a drainage plan with it, period. Because it is fecal material and other stuff, so it's got to be, if it can't be picked up. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. It's good stuff, good comments.
It might be worth noting too that currently, right now, as the code is written, we have concrete as the flat surface, but it's surrounded by P-rock. And the P-rock is intended as a drainage buffer, as a catch. So, in that system, the P-rock is already acting as it should be. It's just unfortunate that we have the concrete in the middle.
I've seen it. Yes, please.
Is the bike path still back there between Big Jim's and you guys? Is that still an active bike path?
The part of the long-term plan, and I think the new construction of the bike path that we moved to the front, that hasn't occurred yet, but I think ultimately the goal is to vacate that bike path, because right now where that stretch is just behind this building, that's the only stretch that's left to be set off a third. Everything else is on third, so is right.
Okay, so thank you. I appreciate your diligence on this matter. You guys have, you probably thinking to myself, why would you want to get all this stuff out of there? You guys have rewritten the rules on this thing, and other dog daycares are going to follow you, and you almost get a patent on some of this. But I thank you very much for coming in and being so diligent with us and patient with us and explaining fecal matter to us many times over. And I do, and I really appreciate seeing you guys, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we'll see you next month.
Okay, switching gears, we have one last item for discussion.
And you better make it small. Oh. Or short. Or tiny.
Jeez, I hope you're not in town all week. We have a just a discussion and a brief presentation to get something on your radar. We're all aware of tiny homes. We've talked about it in certain venues. Everybody's got a little different idea of what the tiny home is. So we have Cody Bartholomew, an individual who's interested in maybe trying to get some of these types of developments underway. So the first place to start is the Planning and Zoning Commission. There's a kind of a neat little video that that Cody's found, and then we have a few schematics of a floor plan and some things, but the intent is to just get it in front of the commission, start a discussion, and then we'll just see where it goes. So I guess I would ask Cody. And this is sort of informal, so we're not.
Sure. Good evening, Cody Bartholomew. I've got a video here. This is a tiny home development that was in Reno, Nevada. A couple of architects got together and they did a little urban infill project in downtown Reno, and they were able to put 10 tiny homes on a lot that's about 172 by 120 feet. And this will give you, I'm modeling my project off of this one. I'm looking at potentially putting 4 tiny homes on a city lot that's like 100 by 120 feet. So this will give you a feel of what the houses look like.
And we're having we still have audio difficulties, so we're gonna.
We came up just through the video to be able to be seen on TV and heard by you guys. So.
We build tiny homes because we like doing things that people tell us can't be done. Welcome to Tiny 10.
Turning what used to be a parking lot into 10 tiny homes has been truly amazing. My new tiny house, it fits me and the dogs perfectly.
Reno, Nevada, known as the biggest little city in the world, is living up to its reputation with a new tiny home development that's big on design but leaves a small footprint. This is Tiny 10, a planned community of 10 energy-efficient houses. Each one measures around 650 square feet and has 2 floors. They're designed to be compact without sacrificing creature comforts you'd expect to find in a full-size house. Each comes with a washer and dryer, air conditioner, a kitchen with slick appliances, a private backyard, and a garage.
We classify these as kind of like a glove house. It fits just right. It's not too big, not too little. We feel like our tiny houses are more livable in the long term.
Local developers Pam Haberman and Kelly Ray are behind the project. Both were early adopters of the tiny living philosophy.
The tiny home phenomenon, we started thinking about it probably about 20 years ago.
In fact, their last home was a compact 400 square feet, which allowed them to live affordably after the 2007 housing market crash.
We lost pretty much darn near everything. We moved into a small, comfortable place to call home.
Ever since, they've taken on various tiny home projects. Tiny 10 is, by far, their most ambitious.
This is very modern, very upscale, just in miniature form. I've had the vision for 11 years for people that want to downsize or that want to simplify.
That was the reason for 31-year-old Kevin Greenwald, one of the first residents to move into Tiny 10.
I had previously owned a 1,600 square foot home. It was a 3-bed, 2.5 bath, just way too big. So I realized very quickly that I needed less space and something that was a lot more manageable for me.
His current house spans 2 floors, has 2 bedrooms and a bathroom.
My new tiny house is about 450 square feet on the first floor. Logan loves the stairs, and then the loft is another 200 square feet, kind of a multi-purpose room, a spare bedroom if family or friends come to stay, and also an office. And the downstairs space, I really wanted to be kind of the common area where I have my entertainment center down here, and there is a really quick access to the backyard for the dogs. All the houses are kind of facing this communal area, so it's very welcoming, very inviting for the neighbors.
Karen Prudy, who moved 2 doors down from Kevin, also came here to downsize and to save money. As a recent retiree and active grandmother, affordable housing is critical for maintaining her tight budget. Karen bought this house for about $220,000. That's nearly half the cost of an average new home in Reno, which typically runs $450 grand.
It's just horrendous what you have to pay per month. At these houses, your mortgage would be cheaper than what they're paying for rent. Now, in my 60s, I started looking at coming more into downtown Reno, and these were just opening up, and I was like, that's exactly what I want.
Tiny 10 is perfect for the person who enjoys proximity to their neighbors, who loves a downtown or urban environment, who cares about their footprint.
Locating Tiny 10 in the heart of downtown Reno was essential to the project's success. The development is considered urban infill, which is city planning speak for recycling unused land.
For every acre that you develop in an infill setting, 4 acres of open space are preserved. We don't like to see the mountaintop scraped off and sprawl. And what that means is, just stay in the urban center and leave nature as nature.
While one development can't turn an entire city around, the philosophy it embodies might be able to. And in the meantime, the community's residents are feeling an immediate impact.
I love that I'm retired, I get to be at home, but there's going to be a lot of young people. I think it's just going to be awesome.
The fact that I know my neighbors so well, it's amazing. This space definitely feels like home.
So when you're looking at doing something like this, you're looking at just tweaking R4, R3, R2? I mean, you wouldn't put this in R1, right?
January 2000.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Are you looking at just tweaking one of our existing residential zoning or having a whole new zoning class?
Well, we're,
because it seems like when I look at like Belmont Homes or that seems like the exact same thing. You're just putting a little space between them.
right, yeah, we haven't dug, did a real deep dive yet on any of the specifics. So there's different tools that we know we can either go through a process of, defining an exact ordinance, or we can go through our PUD process where, as you have seen, where you take a development and you're allowing, we, by the flexibility to allow maybe a shorter distance between one point to another point, all those things. So again, we haven't dug that deep yet. Okay. Also, we haven't really, as staff, looked at any specific area of town, literally down in the weeds of where this would go, right. Ideally in one place versus another. So it's still at I'd say a reasonably high level in terms of staff work to this point. Interesting. Did you want to go over those other? I saved these two as well. As far as the.
Sure. Here's a site plan showing a lot that's, again, it's about 100 by 120, a corner lot. You got 4 units with the common area and then single stall garages attached for each unit. Or actually it's 100 by 140, it says on there. We do have a couple of lots in Grand Forks that are potential locations for this. This particular one is on 55th, and it's west of South Washington.
So you put it, you're looking at it like
So this existing lot right now is, this is actually 2 lots. It's a twin home lot, and I'd be looking to divide it into 4 lots.
Yeah, yeah. So it's taking 2 twin home lots and putting 4 properties. Would you then have to bump it up to R3?
Well, it does raise some interesting questions on, typically when we talk density, it's easy to conceive of a 24-unit apartment building, X acres, there's your density, where this is kind of a different way of looking at it.
It seems to fit into the condo.
Very, very much so.
Very much in that model.
Right. That's,
You just not have them touch each other. Then you gotta look at individual, you gotta try to model that individually, is it gonna be an association, is it gonna be? Would each person own? So yeah, would each person own their own lot there then?
I think so.
Would they own, and would there be any common ownership, or would everything be?
I think the driveway, garage, there would definitely need to be an association for snow removal and such. And we would just probably lump lawn care and snow removal in there as the association.
So it's condo.
That's what we're kind of getting around, Mr. Bartholomew, is just kind of going, well, we get it through it, you just like, here's your
Greta's
deal,
gonna yell at me.
R2, R3, go nuts.
Greta's gonna yell at us.
Oh, boy. Yeah, thank you. So, we're trying to kind of wrap our head around a little bit and say, okay, when you get to a certain point, okay, buy a lot, get it zoned for R3 or 2 or whatever it is, and go crazy.
Well, that's what
you
I
want to have 2 tiny homes, you want to, whatever the maximum coverage is of that zoning, and we're kind of out of it.
It would make, yeah, it would seem to make sense. Hey, we approve R2 or R3 for an area. You want to build condos there, fine. You want to build tiny homes there, fine. Whatever you want to. Does that make sense from your, I mean, it seems like it simplifies, it keeps us away from the PUD process. If we could tweak our process so you guys can just approve these as they.
right, and like I said, we haven't done that deep enough dive yet to really.
And that's why I'm just throwing things out there to you to think about when you're looking at it.
I think it would be a preferred course not to recreate and reinvent some long ordinance process if we can accomplish things. But there's other things we need to take a look at in general. Parking is always a big thing, whether it's a 24 unit, an 85 unit apartment building, or in this case, 4 smaller units. So we have to take that into account. Typically for a single family home, it's usually two stalls per, depending on, some of the differences. So that's just one of, a number of different factors that we'll really need to take into account.
But it seems like you don't need to reinvent the wheel here. I mean, it seems like we've got.
We would prefer not to reinvent.
Ryan's giving me this funny look.
The only thing I would say is if we had one developer coming and say he wanted to do 30 of them all at once, then we can go and set aside an area. We got somebody interested in trying this. He's kind of got a concept here that I think can work, but he's saying, I think it's a small bite of the apple he's looking to start with, you know, that let's not make him go with 30 right off the bat. So he's just saying, I want to go to 4, and then he's trying to find an area to do that. And so you have to kind of incorporate in some of the current developments. So we don't have R3s just out there waiting for this. So he probably has to look at some R1s and R2s, and then, it may make him go to the neighborhood and have a neighborhood meeting and then come back and look at some changes potentially. So I think he's kind of saying, do you guys like the concept? And I think I see a lot of heads nodding.
I don't like it in R1. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I love the concept. I love it in all kinds of areas. I would be skeptical about R1. Now, but I can think of R1 areas where it would be great too. So, I mean, it's but R2 and R3, I think it's perfect. Put them anywhere we have R2 or R3.
I think we have to be a little bit careful with R2 though as well, because there's a big difference between
2 and 4.
Yeah, like, I think this is a great idea too. I'm excited to see this happen. But if this is next to somebody who is in a twin home, one neighbor, this is going to be quite startling. to have this next door, right?
I mean, you literally even watch a video, you could have 2 people, 2 dogs, 2 cats, you know, you look at,
That's a lot of people.
in a little house.
Yeah. So,
But it could get into R4 pretty quick, is what you're saying, for density.
well, at least 3, right? I mean.
I'm almost thinking it's a 3.
And it almost
Well, but
needs
it
to.
depends. I mean, what it does.
I don't know that it could be in a development that's already far along. Just because it's pretty different.
Not an R1 development.
No.
No.
But it might fit in an R2, it might fit in an R3.
Well, I'm just thinking of some of the townhouses that are out in that neighborhood. You know, they're not, they're expensive homes, right? So if.
Well, in this
is on
case, I
the
think we would,
corner-
you know, he would have to go to the neighborhood
Sure.
and have a neighborhood meeting first.
And we can do
And then
that.
come back
Right.
and, yeah.
Just as you're exploring things, I would definitely have a hard time with R1 and R2 is.
It's a fourplex with more siding, I mean.
Right. But I mean, but let's call it where, let's put it where those are, is what I'm saying. Yeah,
And where those are R3, right?
probably. Yeah.
A fourplex?
These are individually owned too, so I mean, you know, a lot of our R3s are not individually owned. This is a different product, there's home ownership that comes with this.
Right.
So I would say that, I think there is lots of places that could work, and then some that may be more problematic. In this case, I think what I'm hearing is the product's good, and then, you know, perhaps go to the neighborhood meeting maybe.
Absolutely.
I don't
Well,
want to step
depending
on,
on where you're gonna
you may
build.
have more to say, but.
It would be a neat infill project on Third Street on the north end or
Abs-
something.
that's what I was
Whether
thinking.
the neighborhood agrees or not, I think it would be neat with the additional people close to the Greenway. I don't know, or downtown, it'd be cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, downtown, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm not married to this specific location, obviously.
No,
I'm,
we're just giving you some input on what.
like if
our
the,
thoughts
yeah,
are.
if there are lots available, I'm open.
Town Square? Oh, was my mic on?
I'll second that.
One thought, I actually, you're talking a lot about the densities, right? And if it's R2 or R3, I think the density is like one of the strongest points here. And I also agree that, you mentioned this was in like 55th. I also think that infill would be a great opportunity for this.
Good luck.
The only thing that comes to mind is some months back, we had Meredith give a presentation, right, about form-based code in the like B4 urban core. I'm not sure where that's at right now. I still.
Getting it back from consultant.
Okay. So you just reminded me of it, that's all.
I'm going. Mr. Matichak.
Just make this R5. Make this R5 and then put it in wherever it fits.
No, okay, well, and that's what I want to avoid, is having a
Well,
whole
but what-
separate thing that can only be these.
Yeah, but if you tie it to 3 or 4 or 2,
But I think it makes a lot of sense with a lot of those. And so just why, I mean.
so then
we're
basically,
planning big
if you're
areas.
gonna do that, then it's basically a conditional use permit to do it, or I mean, to get it started that way. I mean,
Maybe for the first one or two. but-
yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, I want to be able to say, hey, there's 15 spots in town that are R3, put it in any one of those, and, you know.
But say somebody comes in on the outside of town, on the west part of town or something, and he wants to do 30 in a lot that's on the edge of town.
If we've decided that that's a good place for R3, then why should we get?
So you're gonna call it an R3, that's what you
No,
want to do?
I'm just saying, I mean, I don't know.
I think we're gonna hang ourselves if we put it in one R3 or R4, personally. It's gonna be very hard to,
See, I think it makes it easier, because then people can go around and look, where are my opportunities here? And they can look around. And we've already decided what kind of density we want in that area. We've already decided what density is around it. People know when they come in, they say, okay, that's an R4 density, or an R3 or whatever. It can look like this, it could look like this. They know what it is. The idea is when people come to zoning and planning, they have some idea of what it looks like.
but that's still gonna have to go to the neighbors. I mean, it's just.
No, but why would
yeah.
it have to go to the neighbors? If we've already proved
Well,
that
like you
that's a
just said,
density
there's some
we're comfortable
expensive
with.
houses out there, and Do these
Well, that's
people-
why I'm saying it can't be an
Yeah,
R1
Well, and
without a special, without a PUD or something like that. But in general, we shouldn't make every tiny home person come to us and get special permission. We should be able to say, if it looks like an R3 or an R2, put it there. You don't have to come back to us. We've decided that's a density we like there. You know?
I don't either.
Well, and can I,
Please.
I don't agree because I'm thinking about the R2 is meant to be that buffer, right? So from the R1, so you've got, and I'm just gonna pretend this is out at the golf course, right? And you've got a $800,000 house that then is gonna have that buffer of R2. Do you think that having those houses connected with one shared wall is the same thing as putting 4 houses on that lot?
Well, I'd have to look at the densities. That's what I'm talking about. I think it's R2 or R3. I don't know which one.
Oh. So you're not saying it would be either one of those?
No, I mean, I think we'd have to sit down and look at sometimes he's talking about 4 on one R2 lot. Sometimes he's talking about 10 on one R1 lot. I mean, it depends on.
Okay.
But it all comes down to density.
Sure.
At the end of the day, it comes down to density, I think.
And if I could just follow on, I think it goes so far, and I think this is just a good example of this discussion, it kind of goes far beyond our conventional terms. You know, when we envision standard R1, 2, 3, and 4, I think there's a lot of other things that are coming into play that we have to think sort of beyond those conventional terms into setbacks, parking regulations, things that are on top of those conventional terms.
But what I don't want to lose sight of here also is people, when they buy property, are entitled to know what's going to be around them and have some idea of what that's going to be. And so if we just kind of say we're going to stick these wherever we feel like it, whenever they come to us, that doesn't give people buying new property an idea of what their neighborhood that they're moving into is going to look like.
Yeah, I agree with that. Good food for thought.
To me, it seems too that this would be attractive to somebody who likes to live in a more dense area and would want to be downtown and would want to have the amenities close and walking. So to me, and I know that you're not married to that area, to me, that's like the complete opposite of being on the way south end of town where the lots are large and you can't really walk too much. It doesn't seem like that's who's gonna buy these. Does that make sense? That
Yep.
doesn't seem like your target audience for this doesn't wanna be there.
I don't know, I think the target audience is more diverse than you think. And
Do you have any idea what these will cost?
our goal right now is under 200,000. And that, again, it depends on the lot price. The lot price is gonna drive the bus on all of that. But like this location here, it's got greenway access and you can get anywhere in town on the greenway.
Okay.
Just one last thought.
Please.
Yeah, as far as the density goes, I think of where I live, a lot of single-family homes, right, but have been converted over time and are now much denser. The lot behind us is like a 5-plex. Next to us, I think, is a 6-plex. I think it was listed as a 10-plex, not far, and that's not a problem. I'm not frightened by greater density at all, especially if it's in an infill context. So.
I am, that's why I live where I live. I mean, we're in America, we could choose. Nope, not after 5. Cows are better. We're gonna put one up in the Fox Farms, Mr. Matichak.
Thank you,
Okay?
guys.
Thanks, Mr. Bartholomew. Very, very good stuff, very interesting. Good food for thought for a month to think about.
Well, and as we continue whatever discussions that we have, we'll certainly keep the commission posted.
We're really getting urbanized now. Mr. Matichak.
First of all, I want to apologize to the commission because I should have asked this. I need to get a clarification on 3-1. Going back to that Oscarville subdivision project, what we approved tonight is not the final project because you still have to go with the state water department, the township, and the county, if I'm correct on that. I just want to clarify that. Because they're going to drain into the interstate ditch. And there's been some concern over that.
Do you know?
To get from 27th to the English Coulee diversion, they want to use the existing Interstate 29 ditch.
For those of you who don't know, my name is David Karenko. I'm the interim assistant city engineer. I'm not overly familiar with the details of that project. I know that I think the proposed project has the discharge running to the north and then to the interstate ditch.
But by our packet, the stuff that was city property is not the entire project. I just want, so we're clear on that.
We'll verify that before city council and verify everything you're saying to make sure that if we need to go.
Because we were told to come to a water resource district meeting on this and some other things through the township and other residents that were out there. So, and I apologize for not bringing it up when we had 3-1, but I just wanted to clarify that the only things that were done tonight were the stuff that the city has.
Right, just the plat itself.
Okay.
Nope.
Thank you.
No
Sorry
approvals
about
or
that.
actions on it.
Thank you, Mr. Matichak. Very good. Anything else for Mr. Gangler?
No, sir, I think that's all staff has.
Mr. Reichert.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Johnson. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Stormwater plan. That's the
Meeting
stormwater
adjourned.
plan I'm talking about. It's not.
Thank you for being with us tonight. This meeting has been brought to you in part by
Let Grand Forks International Airport help you start your next vacation off on the right foot. Grand Forks International Airport offers flights to the sunny destinations of Orlando, Las Vegas, and Phoenix on Allegiant, and connections anywhere in the world through Minneapolis-St. Paul on Delta. Forget the hassle of long drives, parking nightmares, and stressful check-ins. The convenience of flying locally means less headaches and more time for you. Grand Forks International Airport. Your airport. Simply grand.
Know what's in this box? Well, in case your crystal ball is broken, here's a hint. Safe, reliable energy, for starters, but there's also a commitment to this community. See, at Xcel Energy, this is our hometown. So we're not just about making a living here, we're about living here. Oh, I wish I had wings.
In our community, we're always delivering. Xcel Energy, responsible by nature.
Grand Forks. On Saturday, August 17th, feel the thrill of WWE Live with the Universal Champion.
The age of Rollins is here, and we are going to burn it down!
See Seth Rollins collide with Baron Corbin for the Universal Championship, plus Braun Strowman battles Bobby Lashley one-on-one. It's WWE Live at Grand